Ever wonder what medieval people stuffed in their pockets? Did travelers 1,000 years ago have their own version of keys, wallet, phone before leaving the house? The medieval road was a dangerous place filled with bandits, wild animals, and unpredictable weather, making preparation essential for survival. Medieval travelers, whether merchants, pilgrims, or messengers, had to carefully consider what to bring on their journeys. Number 10. Protective amulets and religious items. Would you brave medieval roads without divine protection? Medieval travelers certainly wouldn't. In an age where danger lurked around every corner and supernatural threats seemed just as real as physical ones, spiritual protection was considered essential gear. Travelers rarely left home without some form of religious protection. Pilgrims heading to holy sites like Santiago de Compostela or Jerusalem wore distinctive badges to identify themselves as pilgrims, which sometimes offered protection from harassment. These badges, often made of lead or pewter, served as souvenirs and proof of completed pilgrimages. Prayer beads were another common item, allowing travelers to count prayers while walking. Simple rosaries made of wooden beads strung together were popular among those of modest means, while wealthy travelers might carry ornate examples crafted from precious materials. Travelers also carried small religious tokens like pieces of saints' clothing, tiny fragments of bone from holy figures, or small containers of holy water or oil. These relics were treasured possessions believed to ward off illness, accidents, and evil influences during the journey. Even non-religious protective items were common. Some travelers carried curious objects like dried toads, special stones, or herbs tied in bundles to protect against specific threats. A pouch containing mugwort might be carried to ward off exhaustion, while a badger's tooth could supposedly protect against toothaches on the road. The line between religious devotion and superstition was often blurry. Many travelers carried objects that blended Christian beliefs with older folk traditions, creating a personalized protection system for the dangerous medieval roads. Number 9. Fire-starting tools. Could you survive without the ability to make fire? Medieval travelers considered fire-starting tools absolutely essential for survival on the road. Without the convenience of matches or lighters, creating fire required skill and specialized equipment. The most common fire-starting kit included flint, steel striker, and tinder. The flint, a hard sedimentary rock, would be struck against a piece of high-carbon steel to create sparks. These sparks would then ignite the tinder, usually dry, fibrous plant material like fungi, dried grass, or charcloth, partially burned cotton or linen. Travelers wrapped these precious tools in oil-treated leather pouches to keep them dry, as wet fire-starting materials were useless. Some wealthier travelers carried small metal tinder boxes to better protect their fire-making supplies from the elements. Making fire wasn't just about comfort, it was a matter of survival. Fire provided warmth during cold nights when travelers couldn't reach an inn or hospice. It cooked food, purified water through boiling, and kept dangerous animals at bay during overnight stops in the wilderness. A good fire could dry wet clothing, preventing the deadly threat of hypothermia that claimed many medieval travelers' lives. Fire also served as a social necessity. Arriving at a strange village, the ability to contribute to the communal fire represented good manners and helped travelers integrate temporarily into local communities. Some medieval accounts describe travelers being viewed with suspicion if they couldn't or wouldn't participate in fire making. Medieval travelers became experts at creating fire in challenging conditions. They knew which local materials made the best tinder and how to find dry materials even during rainstorms. This practical knowledge passed down through generations was often as valuable as the tools themselves. Number 8. Portable food provisions. How long could you last without food on a dangerous journey? Medieval travelers faced this question regularly, as food sources along medieval roads were unreliable at best. Smart travelers never set out without some form of portable rations. Hard bread or traveler's bread formed the foundation of medieval travel food. Unlike regular bread that quickly grew moldy, this twice-baked bread could last for weeks or even months. Similar to modern hardtack, it was often so dense and hard that travelers had to soak it in water, ale, or wine before eating to avoid breaking teeth. Dried meats like jerky provided protein for the journey. Medieval travelers perfected preservation techniques for meats, heavily salting and drying strips of venison, beef, or pork that would remain edible for extended periods. These weren't luxury foods, they were functional, calorie-dense necessities for the road. Nuts and dried fruits offered more complete nutrition. Walnuts, hazelnuts, almonds, dried apples, pears, and various berries were common travel foods. Wealthy travelers might carry more exotic dried fruits like dates or figs if their journeys took them through regions where these items were traded. Hard cheeses completed the typical travel ration. Unlike soft cheeses that spoiled quickly, aged hard cheeses could last for weeks without refrigeration. Wrapped in cloth and waxed linen, these cheeses provided fat and protein when other food sources were unavailable. Travelers carried these foods in linen pouches, small wooden boxes, or waxed cloth wrappings. Spices like salt, garlic, and herbs weren't just for flavor, they helped preserve food and were believed to prevent illness on the road. Medieval travelers developed clever systems for rationing their food supplies. They knew exactly how much to eat daily to make provisions last until the next market town or monastery where supplies could be replenished. They also learned which wild plants could safely supplement their diets when supplies ran low. Number 7. Drinking vessels and water containers. Could you traverse vast distances without carrying water? Medieval travelers understood that water, finding it, carrying it, and ensuring it was safe could mean the difference between life and death on the road. Most travelers carried some form of water container, though these varied widely by region and social status. Common folk often used simple leather bottles called costrals with narrow necks that could be stoppered with wooden plugs. These leather containers were lightweight when empty, making them ideal for long journeys on foot. Wealthier travelers might carry ceramic jugs glazed on the inside to prevent leakage, though these were heavier and prone to breaking. The very wealthy sometimes displayed their status with metal drinking vessels, tin cups for the moderately prosperous, and silver goblets for the truly rich. Pilgrim flasks represented a specialized form of water container. These flat, round vessels with narrow necks were specifically designed for religious travelers. Often made of pewter or lead alloys, they sometimes featured religious imagery and could be worn on cords around the neck, leaving hands free for walking staffs. Water safety concerned medieval travelers just as it does modern backpackers. They preferred to collect water from springs rather than standing water, knowing from experience that spring water was less likely to cause illness. Many travelers carried small amounts of alcohol, usually wine or ale, to mix with questionable water sources, unknowingly using alcohol's antibacterial properties to make water safer. Some clever medieval travelers carried filtered straws made from hollow reeds stuffed with charcoal, moss, and sand. These primitive water filters couldn't remove all contaminants but could improve the taste and appearance of water found along the journey. Experienced travelers memorized reliable water sources along common routes. Medieval travel accounts sometimes include detailed information about where to find good water, reflecting how crucial this knowledge was for survival. Monasteries and churches often provided clean water for travelers, becoming important waypoints on many journeys. Number 6. Personal hygiene items. Did medieval travelers really go weeks without bathing? Contrary to popular belief, medieval people valued cleanliness, and travelers carried basic hygiene supplies for both practical and social reasons. Most travelers carried combs made from bone, wood, or horn. These dual-sided implements typically featured wide teeth on one side for detangling and fine teeth on the other for removing lice and nits, unwelcome traveling companions on medieval roads. Combs were so essential that they're frequently found at archaeological sites along medieval travel routes. Small razors or shaving knives allowed male travelers to maintain appearances. While full bathing might be rare on the road, the ability to shave could help a traveler maintain dignity and social acceptance. These implements were carefully wrapped in leather to protect both the blade and the owner. Linen cloths served as medieval washcloths for quick cleaning when full bathing wasn't possible. Travelers dampened these cloths with water to wipe away road dust and sweat. Some carried small amounts of soap, a luxury item made from animal fat mixed with ash for more thorough cleaning when opportunities arose. Dental care wasn't ignored either. Travelers carried small sticks with frayed ends to serve as toothbrushes, along with roughage like horsetail plants that could be chewed to clean teeth. Some carried clove oil for toothaches, one of the most dreaded ailments that could strike on the road. Simple mirrors made of polished metal allowed travelers to check their appearance before entering towns or important meetings. These weren't just about vanity. Looking disheveled could mark someone as suspicious or dangerous in medieval society, potentially leading to unwelcome attention from local authorities. Wealthier travelers sometimes carried pomanders, perforated containers holding scented materials like dried flowers, herbs, or spices, to combat body odor and supposedly protect against disease. The pleasant scent provided psychological comfort in an era when bad smells were associated with illness. Number 5. Tools for clothing repair. What would you do if your only set of clothes tore while weeks away from home? Medieval travelers faced this dilemma regularly and carried practical solutions with them. Needles and thread were essential items in any traveler's pack. Typically stored in small bone or wooden containers to prevent loss, these simple tools could extend the life of clothing through regular repairs. Most travelers carried needles of different sizes, large ones for mending heavy fabrics like wool cloaks and finer ones for delicate linens. Thread choices reflected practical concerns. Linen thread worked well for undergarments and summer clothing, while wool thread suited heavier winter garments. Travelers often carried thread already dyed to match their clothing, though undyed thread could be colored with natural materials found along the road if necessary. Small scissors or fabric knives allowed travelers to cut patches from hidden parts of garments to repair more visible tears. This economical approach meant that a single garment could be repaired multiple times before becoming unwearable. Clothing fasteners were precious items carried carefully. Before buttons became common, medieval clothes were fastened with pins, laces, or hooks and eyes. Travelers carried spares knowing that lost fasteners could make clothing unwearable. Metal pins were particularly valuable and carefully stored in special cases to prevent loss. Travelers also carried small pieces of spare fabric, especially for patching footwear. Foot bindings and simple leather shoes wore out quickly on medieval roads, and the ability to make quick repairs could prevent painful blisters or injuries that might end a journey prematurely. The skills for clothing repair were as important as the tools. Young people typically learned basic mending techniques before ever leaving home, considering these skills essential life knowledge. Travelers who couldn't repair their own clothing risked spending precious coins on professional repairs in towns or appearing increasingly ragged as their journey progressed. Number 4. Navigation tools. How would you find your way without GPS or even proper maps? Medieval travelers relied on simpler but effective methods to navigate the complex web of medieval roads and paths. Contrary to popular belief, some medieval travelers did use maps, though these looked nothing like modern cartographic works. These rudimentary maps often showed major towns as simple symbols, with lines representing roads connecting them. Distances were frequently measured in days of travel rather than miles or kilometers, reflecting the practical concerns of medieval journeyers. For those who couldn't afford maps or couldn't read, itineraries provided written or verbal directions from one landmark to another. These might be memorized before departure or carried as simple written notes for those who could read. A typical direction might read, "Follow the road past the oak with 3 trunks, then turn at the shrine with the blue Madonna." The sun served as a reliable navigational tool for daytime travel. Experienced travelers could roughly gauge direction and time of day by the sun's position. Some wealthy travelers carried simple sundials that could be used to determine the approximate hour when the sun was visible. For nighttime or cloudy conditions, some travelers carried primitive compasses. By the late medieval period, magnetic compasses had spread from maritime use to land travel, though they were expensive and relatively rare. These early compasses featured magnetized needles floating in water or balanced on pivots. Stars provided another nighttime navigation option. Medieval travelers, particularly those who journeyed regularly, learned to identify key constellations like the North Star, Polaris, to maintain direction after dark. This celestial navigation required no equipment but considerable knowledge passed down through generations. Landmarks dominated medieval navigation. Distinctive natural features like unusual trees, rock formations, or river bends served as waypoints along with human-made markers like crosses, shrines, and milestones. Travelers memorized or recorded sequences of these landmarks to follow established routes. Perhaps most importantly, medieval travelers relied on local knowledge. Stopping at inns, monasteries, or villages to ask for directions was common practice. Offering a small payment or trade good in exchange for reliable directions was considered a worthwhile investment. Number 3. Money and trade goods. Would you travel without access to funds? Medieval travelers faced complex challenges when it came to carrying and managing money on the road. Coins posed a particular problem for medieval travelers. They were heavy, attracted thieves, and often couldn't be used across different territories with their own currencies. Most travelers addressed this by carrying only enough coins for immediate expenses, hidden in multiple locations on their person and belongings. Common hiding spots included special interior pockets sewn into clothing, hollow walking staffs, false bottoms in food containers, and secret compartments in shoes or boots. Some travelers went so far as to hide coins in their hair, particularly women with elaborate braided styles that could conceal small valuables. For longer journeys, particularly those crossing political boundaries, travelers carried letters of credit, medieval ancestors of travelers' checks. These documents allowed merchants to deposit money with banking houses in their hometowns and withdraw equivalent funds in distant cities, avoiding the risk of carrying large sums. Valuable trade goods often substituted for currency. Small, high-value items like spices, jewelry, or silk could be carried and traded or sold as needed. These items sometimes retained value better than coins when crossing between different currency regions. Belt pouches were the medieval equivalent of wallets, though wise travelers kept these partially hidden under outer clothing. These leather pouches attached to belts contained small amounts of ready money for immediate expenses, while larger sums remained better concealed. Some travelers carried small scales and touchstones for testing precious metals. These tools allowed them to verify the purity of unfamiliar coins or metal goods they might receive in trade. Counterfeit coins and debased currency presented real problems for medieval travelers in unfamiliar regions. Strategic spending characterized the experienced traveler's approach to money. They knew when to appear prosperous when seeking quality accommodations or trying to impress potential business partners, and when to seem poor when traveling through dangerous areas or negotiating prices. Number 2. Weapons and self-defense tools. Would you brave the medieval countryside unarmed? Few travelers did, as roads connecting medieval towns and cities were notorious for bandit attacks and other dangers. Walking staffs served as the most common and practical weapon for travelers of all social classes. Often reaching 6 feet in length, these sturdy wooden poles provided support on difficult terrain while doubling as effective defensive weapons. Some travelers added metal caps to their staffs, increasing their effectiveness as striking weapons. Knives were ubiquitous among medieval travelers. These weren't primarily weapons but multi-purpose tools used for eating, preparing food, cutting rope, and other daily tasks. However, in dangerous situations, an ordinary eating knife could become a defensive weapon. Most travelers carried at least one knife, while those expecting trouble might carry several of different sizes. Wealthier travelers sometimes carried swords, though these were expensive and in many regions required special permission or social status to wear openly. A sword marked its carrier as a person of means, potentially attracting the very attention most travelers hope to avoid. Nevertheless, merchants carrying valuable goods often employed sword-wearing guards to deter attacks. Cudgels or clubs represented simpler, less expensive weapons carried by common travelers. These short, heavy sticks could deliver incapacitating blows while being easily hidden under cloaks or in packs when entering towns with restrictions on carrying weapons. Some travelers carried slings, simple weapons made from a pouch attached to two cords. Slings could propel stones with surprising force and accuracy. They weighed almost nothing, could be hidden easily, and used abundant ammunition, stones, found along any path. Travelers also carried non-lethal defensive items. Whistles made from bone or wood could summon help in populated areas. Small bags of pepper or ash could be thrown into attackers' faces to create distracting or disabling clouds that facilitated escape. Dogs accompanied some travelers, serving both as companions and protection. A good dog could alert its owner to approaching strangers and deter potential attackers. Some merchant caravans specifically brought large, intimidating dogs trained to defend their masters and goods. The best defense, however, was traveling in groups. Medieval travelers frequently joined together for safety, forming temporary communities on the road. Even strangers might band together at inns or roadside chapels, agreeing to travel together until their paths diverged. Number 1. Multi-purpose clothing and shelter items. How would you prepare for unpredictable weather with only what you could carry? Medieval travelers developed ingenious clothing solutions that addressed multiple needs with minimal weight. The hooded cloak reigned as perhaps the most essential item in a medieval traveler's wardrobe. These versatile garments provided protection from rain, snow, and wind while serving as blankets during overnight stops. Made from wool that retained warmth even when damp, cloaks sometimes featured oil or wax treatments for added water resistance. Beneath the cloak, layers proved crucial for adapting to changing conditions. Travelers wore linen undergarments that could be washed occasionally, covered by wool tunics and leggings that provided warmth. Multiple thin layers worked better than single thick garments, allowing travelers to adjust to temperature changes throughout the day. Hats protected travelers from both sun and rain. Wide-brimmed hats kept sun off the face during summer journeys, while closer-fitting woolen caps provided warmth in winter. Some hats featured decorative pilgrim badges or symbols identifying the traveler's home region or purpose. Footwear created particular challenges for medieval travelers. Leather shoes wore out quickly on rough roads, so travelers carried spare leather and tools for repairs. Many supplemented shoes with woven grass insoles that provided extra cushioning and could be replaced when worn. Wealthy travelers sometimes carried multiple pairs of shoes, while the poor might walk barefoot in good weather to preserve their single pair for harsh conditions. Few medieval travelers carried tents as we know them today. Instead, they used their cloaks combined with simple oiled fabric sheets to create makeshift shelters when necessary. Some carried small tarps made from linen treated with oils or waxes that could be strung between trees to create basic protection from the elements. Rope or cord always found space in travelers' packs. This multi-purpose item could secure makeshift shelters, repair broken equipment, serve as a belt or strap, or help cross difficult terrain. Most travelers carried several lengths of different thicknesses for various purposes. The most prepared travelers carried fire-resistant mittens made from thick leather. These protected hands when cooking over open flames at campsites and proved useful for handling hot cooking vessels or moving burning wood. Gloves served dual purposes, protecting hands from blisters while walking with a staff and serving as a social necessity when meeting important people along the journey. Clean gloves could transform a dusty traveler into a presentable visitor when entering towns or seeking lodging. Experienced travelers learned to pack these clothing items in specific orders, keeping the most immediately needed items accessible while protecting critical gear from the elements. The arrangement of one's pack was considered a skill developed through experience on the road. What would you pack if you had to walk across Europe tomorrow? Would these medieval essentials still serve modern needs? The medieval traveler's pack reveals not just historical curiosities, but time-tested solutions to the universal challenges of human movement through an uncertain world. While our materials and technologies have changed dramatically, the fundamental problems of the journey, staying fed, dry, warm, and safe, remain remarkably similar across the centuries. Perhaps we modern travelers have more to learn from our medieval counterparts than we might initially suspect.